wonder how a guy who'd never built a car in his life convinced the world to pay $3 million for vehicles he made in an old fighter jet factory. Here's how Christian von Koenigsegg did the impossible. Summer of 1994. Ängelholm, Sweden, a disused fighter jet hangar that hasn't seen activity in years. Christian von Koenigsegg is 22 years old and he's literally sleeping on the factory floor because he can't afford an apartment. The concrete is freezing. He's got a sleeping bag, a hot plate, and from what he's described in interviews, maybe $2,000 to his name. No engineering degree, no automotive experience. Never worked at a car company, never even worked in a garage professionally. And he's trying to build a supercar from scratch that can compete with Ferrari and Lamborghini. His family thinks he's lost his mind. Every automotive expert he talks to tells him it's impossible. The Swedish government denied his loan application 3 times according to public records. Banks won't touch him. And yet somehow, he convinced one person to believe in him, just one. A local businessman who gave him enough money to buy some tools and lease this abandoned military hangar. What happens over the next 29 years will create the most insane hypercar company on Earth, building vehicles that break world speed records, that cost more than most people's houses, and that redefine what's physically possible with automotive engineering, and the strategy he used to do it. Nobody else in the industry even considered it. I'm Alex Morgan, this is Behind the Billion, and today we're breaking down how Christian von Koenigsegg went from sleeping on a factory floor to building hypercars that sell for $3 million and have waiting lists years long. Now look, I spent the last week absolutely obsessed with this story. I went deep. I watched every interview Christian's ever given, and this guy has done a lot of interviews because he loves talking about engineering. I read Swedish business publications, I went through patent filings, I studied the technical specifications of every car they've ever made, and honestly, this might be the most audacious founder story I've ever researched. Because here's the thing, when you hear about automotive founders, you hear about people like Enzo Ferrari, who was a race car driver first, or Ferruccio Lamborghini, who was already manufacturing tractors and had factories and equipment and knowledge. Christian von Koenigsegg had none of that. He had a dream that started when he was 5 years old, and he had an obsession that bordered on insanity. So let me take you back to where this actually begins. 1973. Christian is 5 years old, growing up in Sweden, and his mom takes him to see a Norwegian stop-motion animated film. Now, if you're not familiar, the film is called Flakklippa Grand Prix in Norwegian, or the Pinchcliffe Grand Prix in English. It's about this inventor who builds a race car from scratch in his workshop and competes against the world's best. And according to every interview Christian has given about his origin story, and he tells this story consistently, so I believe it's accurate, he watches this film and something clicks in his brain. He walks out of that theater, 5 years old, and tells his mom, "I'm going to build the best sports cars in the world." Now, most 5-year-olds say stuff like this and forget about it by next week, right? They want to be astronauts or firefighters or whatever. Christian never forgot. He talks about this moment like it imprinted on him, like it became his singular purpose. And here's what's wild, he didn't just dream about it, he started actually trying to figure out how to do it. Fast forward to his teenage years. 16, 17 years old. Christian is not going to university. He's not studying mechanical engineering at some prestigious school. Instead, from what I can piece together from his interviews, he's just obsessively reading everything he can find about cars, about aerodynamics, about engineering. He's sketching designs constantly. He's thinking about materials, about powertrains, about chassis design. And keep in mind, this is the 80s, early 90s. There's no YouTube, there's no online forums where you can just learn this stuff. He's going to libraries, he's buying books, he's teaching himself. And then he makes the decision. He's 22 years old, it's 1994, and he decides he's actually going to do it. He's going to start a car company, not work for a car company, start one, build supercars from nothing. Now I want you to think about how insane this sounds. Imagine you're 22, you've never worked in automotive, you have no money, and you tell people you're going to compete with Ferrari and Lamborghini. They'd think you're delusional, right? That's exactly what everyone thought about Christian. His family was supportive but skeptical. From what he said in interviews, they thought it was a phase, something he'd try for a year and then get a real job. But here's where Christian's personality comes into play, and this is critical to understanding the whole story. Christian von Koenigsegg is not a showman. He's not a salesman. He's not charismatic in the traditional sense. If you watch his interviews, he's soft-spoken, he's technical. He gets excited about engineering details that most people would find boring. He's the kind of guy who will spend 20 minutes explaining why a certain type of carbon fiber layup is superior to another approach. And that obsessive attention to technical detail, that becomes his superpower. So 1994, he needs money to start, and this is where the story gets interesting because he doesn't have the typical Silicon Valley path of venture capital or angel investors. The Swedish government has loan programs for new businesses, so Christian applies, and according to his own account, they reject him. Not once, 3 times. The feedback is basically, you have no experience, no track record, this is too risky, we're not funding this. Banks won't touch him either. I mean, think about it from their perspective. A 22-year-old with no automotive background wants to borrow money to build supercars. That's not a business plan, that's a fantasy. But Christian finds one person who believes in him. Now, I haven't been able to find extensive details about this initial investor in public sources, but from what Christian has mentioned, it was a local Swedish businessman who gave him enough capital to lease the factory space and buy some basic equipment. We're not talking millions here. From the way Christian describes those early days, it sounds like maybe $50,000, maybe a bit more, enough to get started, but nowhere near enough to actually build a car. And the factory he leases, this is perfect. It's an old military hangar in Ängelholm, a small town on the southwest coast of Sweden. The Swedish Air Force used to assemble fighter jets there. It's massive, it's empty, and it's cheap. And Christian moves in, not just works there, lives there. He's described sleeping on the factory floor in interviews, using a sleeping bag, cooking on a hot plate. This is not a glamorous startup story. This is survival mode. Now, here's the first major strategic decision that Christian makes, and it's one that defines everything that comes after. He decides that Koenigsegg, that's the company name, just his last name, is not going to follow the traditional automotive manufacturing model. He's not going to build a factory with assembly lines and hundreds of workers in mass production. Instead, he's going to build very few cars, each one essentially hand-built, each one a masterpiece of engineering, and he's going to charge an insane amount of money for them. This is contrarian thinking at its finest. Most car companies, even supercar companies, make money through volume. Ferrari in the 90s was producing thousands of cars per year. Lamborghini, same thing. The business model is to spread your development costs across as many units as possible. But Christian looks at this and thinks, what if we go the opposite direction? What if we make so few cars that each one becomes ultra-exclusive, ultra-expensive, and we can take the time to make them absolutely perfect? Now, I don't know if this was a conscious strategy from day one or if it evolved out of necessity because he didn't have the capital for mass production. But either way, it becomes the foundation of the entire business. So 1994 to 1996, Christian is in this hangar with a tiny team. And when I say tiny, I mean like 5 people according to the early reports I found, and they're building the first prototype, the CC, which stands for competition coupe. And here's where Christian's obsessive nature becomes critical. He's not just trying to build a car that looks cool. He's trying to solve actual engineering problems that the big companies haven't solved. One of the things he becomes obsessed with is weight. He reads about how Colin Chapman, the founder of Lotus, had this philosophy: simplify then add lightness. The idea that the best way to make a car faster is to make it lighter, not just to add more power. And Christian takes this to an extreme. He starts experimenting with carbon fiber, which in the mid-90s is still relatively new in automotive applications. Formula One is using it, but most road cars aren't. And Christian doesn't just use carbon fiber for body panels like some companies do. He decides the entire chassis, the structural foundation of the car, should be carbon fiber. Now, this is incredibly difficult to manufacture. Carbon fiber is strong, but it's also brittle if you don't layer it correctly. You need autoclaves, you need precision, you need expertise. And Christian has none of these things, so he teaches himself, he experiments, he fails, he tries again. From what I've read in technical articles about those early years, they went through multiple failed chassis before they got one that worked. We're talking about months of work that resulted in structural failures in prototypes that had to be scrapped. And this is with almost no money. Every failure is expensive. Every setback puts the company closer to bankruptcy. But by 1996, 2 years in, they have something. They have a running prototype, the CC prototype, and it's wild looking. The design is aggressive, low, wide. It has gull-wing doors because Christian loved the Mercedes 300 SL and wanted that same dramatic entrance. The engine is not custom-built because they can't afford that. It's a modified Ford modular V8, the same basic engine you'd find in a Mustang, but they've twin-turbocharged it and tuned it to produce around 500 horsepower, which in 1996 is serious power for a road car. And here's the move that changes everything. Christian decides to take this prototype to the Cannes Film Festival, not to a car show, to the film festival. Now, this seems random until you understand the strategy. Cannes is where the ultra-wealthy gather. Movie stars, producers, investors, people with money to burn. And Christian figures, if I can get this car in front of these people, maybe someone will want to buy one. So they load the prototype onto a trailer and drive from Sweden to France. And according to Christian's retelling, they set up the car outside the festival, just parked it where people could see it, and it works. People go crazy for it. The design is so aggressive, so different from anything else that it stops people in their tracks. And Christian starts taking orders, not firm orders with deposits, but expressions of interest. People saying, if you build this, I'll buy one. This is the validation he needs. He goes back to Sweden with a list of potential customers and uses that to raise more money. He convinces more investors that there's actually a market for this. And over the next few years, 1997, 1998, 1999, he's building the company, hiring more engineers, refining the design, working on getting the car certified for road use, which is a nightmare of regulations and testing. And then, 2000, the company is 6 years old. They've burned through millions at this point from various investors, and they're ready to show the world what they've built. The production version of the CC. They debut it at the Paris Motor Show, and the automotive press loses their minds. Because here's a car from a company nobody's heard of, from Sweden of all places, a country not known for supercars, and it's competitive with Ferrari and Lamborghini. The performance numbers are insane. 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. Top speed over 240 miles per hour. Carbon fiber chassis, completely hand-built, and the price, they're asking around $400,000, which in 2000 is astronomical for a non-established brand. But here's the problem, they're still not making money, because building these cars is incredibly expensive and time-consuming. Each CC takes thousands of man-hours to build. The profit margins are thin because they're still figuring out the manufacturing process, and they're only building a handful of cars per year. In 2000 and 2001, from what I can find, they maybe built 6 or 7 total cars. And Christian is still obsessed with performance. He's not satisfied with being competitive with Ferrari. He wants to beat everyone. He wants to build the fastest car in the world, and this becomes the next chapter of the story. 2002-2003, Christian and his team start working on a new version, the CCR. The R stands for racing, but it's actually a road car, just a more extreme version. They increase the power to over 800 horsepower. They work on aerodynamics to increase downforce and reduce drag. They obsess over every detail. And in 2005, they do something that gets the entire automotive world's attention. They take the CCR to Italy, to the Nardo test track, which is this high-speed circular track where manufacturers test top speed, and they attempt to break the production car speed record. Now, at the time, the record is held by the McLaren F1, 240.1 miles per hour, set back in 1998. And the McLaren F1 is legendary. It's considered by many to be the greatest supercar ever built, Gordon Murray's masterpiece. For a tiny Swedish company to even attempt to beat it seems absurd. But they do it. The Koenigsegg CCR hits 241 miles per hour. They break the record by less than 1 mile per hour, but they break it. And this is documented, verified, it's in the record books. The publicity from this is insane. Suddenly, Koenigsegg is not just some niche Swedish company. They're the company that built the fastest car in the world. Orders start coming in. Wealthy collectors who want the bragging rights of owning the fastest car, and the waiting list grows to multiple years. But here's where Christian's obsession becomes almost pathological, and I mean that in the best way possible. He's not satisfied. Breaking the record once isn't enough. He immediately starts thinking about how to go faster, how to build an even more extreme car. And this is where the story gets into the truly insane period. 2006, 2007, 2008. Christian and his team are working on multiple projects simultaneously. They're building the CCX, which is designed to meet US regulations so they can finally sell cars in America, the biggest supercar market in the world. They're also working on even more extreme versions, the CCXR, which runs on biofuel because Christian is interested in sustainability, which is wild for a hypercar company. And then they start working on what will become the Agera. This is the car that will define Koenigsegg for the next decade. And the engineering that goes into the Agera is where you really see Christian's philosophy come through. Most supercar companies, they use existing technology and refine it. Maybe they take an engine from a supplier and tune it. Maybe they use a gearbox from a specialist manufacturer. Christian doesn't want to do that. He wants to control everything. So Koenigsegg starts developing their own technology. They develop their own engine. The Koenigsegg engine is a 5-liter V8, but it's not based on anyone else's design. It's completely proprietary, and the power output is ridiculous. In the most extreme versions, over 1,500 horsepower from a 5-liter engine. To put that in perspective, most engines that make that much power are twice the size. They develop their own transmission. Most supercars at this time are using either manual transmissions or dual-clutch automatics. Koenigsegg develops a single-clutch system that's lighter and faster than anything else on the market. They develop their own suspension, their own aerodynamics, their own everything. And this is expensive, incredibly expensive. But Christian's philosophy is that if you want to be the best, you can't rely on suppliers who are also working with your competitors. You have to innovate everything yourself. Now I want to pause here and talk about the business model, because this is critical to understanding how Koenigsegg survived when most boutique car companies fail. Christian is not trying to build a mass market company. He's building maybe 20 to 30 cars per year total, and he's charging insane amounts of money. By the time the Adria comes out in 2011, the base price is over $1 million. Special editions are going for $2 million, $3 million. And here's the genius of it. Because the production numbers are so low, the cars immediately become collector's items. People who buy them know that there will only ever be a few hundred of this particular model in existence. So the resale value stays high, often appreciating. I've seen early Koenigsegg sell at auction for more than their original price, which is almost unheard of in the automotive world where most cars depreciate the second you drive them off the lot. This creates a virtuous cycle. High resale values mean more people want to buy them as investments. More demand means Christian can charge even more. Higher prices mean more profit per car, which he reinvests into research and development. Better technology means faster cars. Faster cars mean more records. More records mean more publicity. More publicity means more demand, and around it goes. But it's not all smooth. 2008, the financial crisis hits, and the luxury market collapses. People who were buying million-dollar cars suddenly aren't. Orders get canceled, deposits get pulled, and Koenigsegg, which is still a small company, is vulnerable. I don't have exact financial data because Koenigsegg is privately held and doesn't publish detailed numbers, but from interviews Christian gave during this period, it sounds like they came close to bankruptcy. They had to lay off some workers. They had to slow down production. It was a genuine crisis. But Christian doesn't panic. This is where you see his long-term thinking. Instead of trying to pivot to cheaper cars or mass production to survive, which is what a lot of consultants probably would have told him to do, he doubles down on exclusivity. He focuses on the customers who are still buying, the ultra wealthy who aren't affected by the recession, and he keeps innovating. 2009, 2010, they survive. The economy starts recovering, and when it does, Koenigsegg is ready. They launched the Adria in 2011 and it's a massive success. The orders pour in. The waiting list extends to years again. And then Christian decides to do something that blows my mind. 2014, 2015. He starts working on a car that he says will be the ultimate Koenigsegg, the 1-to-1. The name refers to the power-to-weight ratio. 1 horsepower per kilogram of weight. This is something that's theoretically possible, but nobody's actually achieved in a road-legal car. To do this, you need incredible power and incredible lightness. The 1-to-1 has a 1,400 horsepower engine, and the car weighs only 1,400 kilograms, which is about 3,080 pounds. For context, a Honda Civic weighs more than that. And this is a car with a massive engine, a full interior, all the safety equipment required for road use. The engineering that goes into achieving this is insane. Every single component is optimized for weight. They use carbon fiber everywhere, not just the chassis but the wheels, the body panels, even small brackets and fasteners are made from titanium or carbon to save grams. And when I say every component, I mean it. Christian has talked in interviews about how they spent months just optimizing the weight of the door hinges. They build 6 of them, total 6 cars, and the price, each one costs $6 million and they sell out immediately. Before the car is even finished, all 6 are sold. Now let me take you to 2017, because this is when Koenigsegg does something that cements their reputation not just as a car company, but as a technology company. They develop a new type of transmission called the light speed transmission, or LSD. And I'm going to get a bit technical here, but stay with me because this is fascinating. Most high-performance cars use dual-clutch transmissions. Two separate clutches, one for odd gears and one for even gears, so you can pre-select the next gear and shift almost instantly. It's fast, but it's heavy and complex. Koenigsegg's LSD is a single-clutch system, but it's so precisely engineered that it shifts faster than most dual-clutch systems while being lighter and more compact. The innovation here is in the software and the hydraulics. They use incredibly fast hydraulic actuators and sophisticated algorithms to control the shift. And Christian doesn't just patent this and keep it for Koenigsegg. He starts licensing the technology to other manufacturers. This is brilliant. It creates a new revenue stream that's not dependent on car sales. It positions Koenigsegg as a technology innovator, not just a car builder. And then, 2017 into 2018, they start working on the most insane car they've ever conceived. The Jesko, named after Christian's father, Jesko von Koenigsegg. And this car is where every lesson, every innovation, every obsessive detail from the previous 25 years comes together. The Jesko has a 5-liter twin-turbo V8 that produces 1,577 horsepower on E85 fuel. The power-to-weight ratio is even better than the 1-to-1. The aerodynamics are so advanced that in high downforce mode, the car generates over 3,000 pounds of downforce at high speed. That's more than some race cars. And Christian designs two versions. The Jesko Absolute, which is optimized for top speed with the goal of eventually breaking 300 miles per hour. And the Jesko Attack, which is optimized for track performance with maximum downforce. The price, around $3 million depending on options. And they're planning to build 125 of them total over several years. And again, they sell out before production even starts. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. Around 2019-2020, Christian starts talking more about sustainability and electric powertrains, which seems contradictory for a company that builds 1,500 horsepower gasoline engines, right? But Christian has always been interested in this. Remember, back in 2007, they built the CCXR, which ran on biofuel. And he starts working on a new car called the Gemera. This is completely different from anything Koenigsegg has done before. It's a 4-seater, not a 2-seater. It's a hybrid combining a tiny 3-cylinder engine with electric motors. And the total output, 1,800 horsepower, from a 3-cylinder engine and some electric motors. It's absurd. The engineering here is cutting edge. The engine, called the Tiny Friendly Giant or TFG, is only 2 liters but produces 600 horsepower on its own through extreme turbocharging and advanced combustion technology. Add 3 electric motors and you get to 1,800 total horsepower. And it's designed to be a practical car, a car you could theoretically daily drive, with 4 seats and luggage space. Now, I don't know if the Gemera will be successful commercially. It's still in development as of when I'm recording this, but the fact that Christian is willing to experiment with completely different concepts shows his mindset. He's not stuck in one approach. He's constantly asking, what's the most interesting engineering problem to solve? And this brings me to the modern era. 2021, 2022, 2023. Koenigsegg is now about 30 years old as a company. They've built several hundred cars total over those 3 decades, and the company is worth, from the limited financial information available, probably over $1 billion in valuation. Christian still owns the majority of it. He's never taken it public, never sold to a bigger company, maintained complete control. And they're still breaking records. In 2020, a Jesko prototype set multiple acceleration records. 0 to 400 kilometers per hour and back to 0 faster than any other production car. The runs are documented, verified, it's in the record books. But here's what I find most interesting about the current state of Koenigsegg. They're tiny. The company employs around 500 people according to recent reports. For context, Ferrari employs over 4,000 people. Lamborghini employs around 2,000. Koenigsegg builds maybe 30 to 40 cars per year. Ferrari builds thousands. But on a per-car basis, Koenigsegg might be the most profitable car company in the world. When you're selling cars for $3 million and building so few of them that each one is essentially a custom commission, the margins are incredible. And because Christian controls costs by keeping the company small and focused, almost all of that profit goes back into research and development. They have one of the highest R&D budgets per employee of any automotive company. They're constantly developing new technology, new materials, new powertrains, new aerodynamics. And because they're not beholden to shareholders demanding quarterly profits, Christian can invest in long-term projects that might not pay off for years. Now let me connect this to what's happening in the automotive industry right now. because there's a pattern here that's really relevant. The entire car industry is going through massive disruption with electric vehicles. Tesla has completely changed the game. Traditional manufacturers like Ford and GM are investing billions to electrify their lineups, and most of the exotic car manufacturers are struggling with this transition. Ferrari announced they're going to be fully electric by 2030. Lamborghini is developing hybrid powertrains. Porsche already has the Taycan, and these companies are spending enormous amounts of money on this transition because they're big, they have huge lineups, they need to electrify everything. Koenigsegg, Christian's approach is different. He's developing hybrid technology with the Gemera. He's experimenting with extreme efficiency in internal combustion engines, but he's not committing to one path, he's keeping options open. And because the company is so small and flexible, he can pivot quickly based on what customers want and what regulations require. This is a massive strategic advantage. When you're only building 30 cars per year, you can customize each one to specific regulations in specific markets. You're not locked into a single platform or powertrain strategy. You can be incredibly agile. And I think this agility, this flexibility, is a huge part of why Koenigsegg has survived when so many other boutique car companies have failed. Think about all the exotic car companies that started in the last 30 years and went bankrupt. Pagani is one of the few that survived, and they follow a similar model to Koenigsegg, very low production, very high prices, but most others, gone. The companies that try to scale too fast, that try to compete on volume, they run out of money. The companies that try to be everything to everyone, they lose their identity. Koenigsegg has stayed laser-focused on being the absolute best at building extremely low volume, extremely high-performance cars, and Christian has never deviated from that vision. Now I want to talk about Christian's leadership style because I think it's a critical part of this story. If you watch interviews with him, and I've watched probably a dozen hours of interviews at this point, he's incredibly hands-on. He's still deeply involved in the engineering. He's not a CEO who just manages from a distance. He's in the factory, he's working with the engineers, he's making technical decisions. And he hires people who are as obsessed as he is. The culture at Koenigsegg, from what I can gather from employee interviews and articles about the company, is intensely focused on engineering excellence. They're not marketing-driven. They don't spend huge amounts on advertising. The cars sell themselves through performance and exclusivity. Christian has said in interviews that he looks for people who are intrinsically motivated, who would be thinking about these problems even if they weren't getting paid. And that's the kind of team you need when you're trying to push the boundaries of what's possible. There's this great anecdote I found in a Swedish business magazine article from a few years ago. An engineer at Koenigsegg was working on a problem with the transmission, trying to shave a few milliseconds off the shift time. And he was stuck, couldn't figure it out. And Christian apparently came over, looked at the problem for a few minutes, and suggested a completely different approach involving changing the hydraulic pressure curves. They tried it and it worked. Christian's not just the CEO, he's legitimately one of the best engineers in the company. This hands-on technical leadership creates a culture where everyone is pushing for perfection. Because if the CEO is that obsessed with details, everyone else has to be too. You can't half-ass anything when the founder is personally reviewing your work and will notice if you cut corners. Now let's talk about the business challenges they've faced, because it hasn't all been smooth sailing. One of the big challenges for a company like Koenigsegg is regulations. Every market has different safety requirements, different emissions requirements, different certification processes. And getting a low-volume car certified is expensive and time-consuming. For years, Koenigsegg couldn't sell cars in the United States because they didn't meet federal safety standards. They finally got US certification with the CCX in 2006, but it took years of engineering work and testing. And every time regulations change, they have to adapt. Another challenge is supplier relationships. When you're building 30 cars per year, suppliers don't prioritize you. If you need a custom component, you're not ordering thousands of units like Ferrari would. You're ordering 30 or 50, so you don't get volume discounts. You don't get priority in the production queue. Christian has dealt with this by bringing more manufacturing in-house. Koenigsegg makes more of their own components than almost any other car company. The engines, the transmissions, a lot of the carbon fiber work, it's all done internally. This gives them control, but it also requires massive investment in equipment and expertise. And then there's the challenge of customer expectations. When someone is paying $3 million for a car, they expect perfection, not just in the car itself, but in the entire experience. The buying process, the delivery, the after-sales support, everything has to be flawless, and Koenigsegg has had some stumbles here. There have been reliability issues with early cars. There have been delivery delays. And when you're dealing with ultra-wealthy customers who have lots of options, these problems can damage your reputation. But Christian's approach has always been to be transparent and to fix problems. If a car has an issue, they bring it back to the factory and make it right. They've issued recalls when necessary. They don't hide problems or make excuses. And I think this honesty has helped them maintain customer loyalty even when things go wrong. Now let me talk about one of the most interesting aspects of Koenigsegg's strategy, and this is something I noticed as I was researching. They're incredibly strategic about which records they go after. They don't just randomly try to be fastest at everything. They pick specific metrics where they think they can win and where winning will generate maximum publicity. For example, the 0 to 400 kilometers per hour to zero record I mentioned earlier. Why that specific metric? Because it's something that's measurable, verifiable, and impressive to people who understand cars. It's not just top speed, which can be dependent on having a long enough straight. It's acceleration and braking, which demonstrates the complete performance capability of the car. And when they set these records, they document everything meticulously. Video from multiple angles, GPS data, independent verification. Because in the hypercar world, there are a lot of claims and not all of them are credible. Koenigsegg makes sure that when they claim a record, it's unquestionable. This builds credibility, and credibility is everything when you're asking people to pay millions of dollars for a car from a relatively small company. You need them to believe that you're not just making claims, you're backing them up with data and evidence. Another interesting aspect of Christian's strategy is how he thinks about competition. He doesn't really view other hypercar manufacturers as enemies. He said in interviews that he respects what Bugatti does, what Pagani does, what the other boutique manufacturers do. He sees them as pushing the entire segment forward. His real competition in his mind is physics. It's the laws of aerodynamics and thermodynamics and materials science. Can we make a car go faster? Can we make it lighter? Can we make it more efficient? These are the questions that drive him, not can we outsell Ferrari. And I think this mindset is liberating, because if you're competing against other companies, you're always reacting to what they do. But if you're competing against physical limits, you're always innovating, always pushing forward regardless of what anyone else is doing. Now let's talk about the future, because this is where things get really interesting. Christian is 51 years old as of when I'm recording this. He's been doing this for 30 years, and the question is, what's next? He's talked in recent interviews about wanting to continue pushing boundaries. The goal with the Jesko Absolute is to break 300 miles per hour, which would be insane. Only a handful of cars have ever gone that fast, and all of them were in highly controlled conditions. To do it in a road-legal car with a customer behind the wheel would be historic. He's also talked about eventually developing a fully electric hypercar, not a hybrid like the Gemera, but a pure EV. And knowing Christian's approach, it won't just be fast in a straight line like a Tesla Plaid. It'll be engineered to be the ultimate driving machine with perfect weight distribution, advanced aerodynamics, the whole package. But here's the big question. What happens to Koenigsegg after Christian? He's the heart and soul of the company. His vision, his engineering genius, his obsessive attention to detail, that's what makes Koenigsegg special. Can that survive without him? I don't know. He hasn't talked publicly about succession planning that I've found. He doesn't have a co-founder who could take over. And I wonder if, when Christian eventually retires or steps back, whether Koenigsegg can maintain its edge or whether it becomes just another luxury brand trading on past glory. This is a challenge for any founder-driven company, right? Steve Jobs and Apple. Enzo Ferrari and Ferrari, although arguably Ferrari has maintained its mystique even decades after Enzo's death. But it's not guaranteed. Some companies are so intertwined with their founder that they can't survive the transition. My guess, and this is pure speculation on my part, is that Christian will probably never fully retire. I think he's the kind of person who will be involved in engineering decisions until he physically can't be anymore. Because this isn't just a job for him, it's his life's purpose. Remember, he decided to do this when he was 5 years old. You don't walk away from that. Now, let me step back and think about the broader lessons here, because that's what we do on this show. We look at these founder stories and extract the principles that apply beyond just one company. First lesson, obsession beats experience. Christian had zero automotive experience when he started, but he had absolute obsession. He was willing to teach himself everything, to fail repeatedly, to sleep on a factory floor if that's what it took. And that obsession carried him through the early years when everyone said it was impossible. Compare that to someone who has lots of experience but no passion. They'll give up the first time things get hard. Christian never gave up because the goal wasn't optional for him. It was his reason for existing. Second lesson, low volume, high value can be a sustainable business model. We're so conditioned to think that successful businesses need to scale, need to grow constantly, need to maximize revenue and market share. But Koenigsegg proves that you can build a highly successful, highly profitable business by staying small and charging premium prices. The key is making sure the product justifies the price, that it's genuinely worth what you're charging. Third lesson, control your destiny through vertical integration. By bringing so much manufacturing in-house, Christian ensured that Koenigsegg doesn't depend on suppliers who might not prioritize them. Yes, it's expensive upfront. Yes, it requires more expertise, but it gives you control over quality, over innovation, over everything that matters. Fourth lesson, pick your battles strategically. Christian doesn't try to compete on every dimension. He's not trying to build the most comfortable car or the most practical car or the cheapest car. He's singularly focused on performance and engineering excellence. And by being laser-focused, he can be the best in the world at that specific thing. Fifth lesson, credibility comes from delivering on promises. Every record Koenigsegg has set, every performance claim they've made, they've backed it up with evidence. This builds trust, and trust is what allows them to charge millions of dollars for cars and have people pay it without hesitation. Sixth lesson, being different is better than being better. There are lots of fast cars in the world, but there's only one Koenigsegg. The combination of Swedish engineering, obsessive attention to detail, ultra-low production numbers, that's unique. Christian didn't try to out-Ferrari Ferrari, he created something entirely different. And finally, seventh lesson, long-term thinking wins. Christian has never optimized for short-term profits. He reinvests everything into R&D. He takes years to develop new models. He doesn't rush to market just to make a quick sale. This patience, this willingness to play the long game, it's what allows you to build something truly great rather than something merely good. Now I want to connect this to what we're seeing in other industries right now, because the Koenigsegg model is actually becoming more relevant, not less. We're in this era where there's enormous pressure to scale quickly, to become a unicorn, to grow at all costs. Venture capital pushes companies to prioritize growth over profitability, to spend huge amounts on customer acquisition, to expand into new markets even if it dilutes the brand. But there's a counter-movement happening. You're seeing more founders who are building intentionally small, highly profitable businesses. They're called calm companies or lifestyle businesses, although I think those terms are a bit dismissive. These are serious businesses, they're just optimized for different metrics than the typical venture-backed startup. And I think Koenigsegg is the ultimate example of this model applied to manufacturing. Christian could have tried to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, build a massive factory, produce thousands of cars per year, but he didn't. He stayed small, stayed focused, stayed true to the original vision. And 30 years later, he's built something that nobody else has. Think about the parallels to other industries. In software, you've got companies like Basecamp that have explicitly rejected the growth at all costs model. They build products for a specific niche, they charge premium prices, they stay small and profitable. In fashion, you've got luxury brands that intentionally limit production to maintain exclusivity. In watches, you've got companies like Patek Philippe that make very few pieces and command astronomical prices. The common thread is understanding that scarcity creates value, and having the discipline to maintain that scarcity even when you could easily scale up. That discipline is rare. Most founders, when they start having success, they want more customers, more revenue, more growth. Christian has always resisted that temptation. And I think part of what enables this is that Christian isn't motivated by money. I mean, yes, he's wealthy now, the company is worth over $1 billion, but if you listen to him talk, he never mentions money. He talks about engineering challenges, he talks about performance targets, he talks about pushing boundaries. The money is a byproduct of solving interesting problems, not the goal itself. This is similar to what we see with other great founder engineers. Steve Wozniak at Apple wasn't motivated by money. He was motivated by building the best computer he could. Gordon Murray with the McLaren F1 wasn't motivated by money. He was motivated by building the ultimate driver's car. When you're intrinsically motivated by the work itself, you make different decisions than when you're extrinsically motivated by financial outcomes. Now, I want to address something that I've been thinking about as I researched this story. Is Koenigsegg's success replicable? Could someone do this today in 2024 or 2025, starting from scratch? My honest answer is it's much harder now than it was in 1994. The barriers to entry in automotive manufacturing have gone up enormously. Regulations are stricter, safety standards are higher, emissions requirements are more stringent. The cost of developing a new car from scratch is astronomical, and customers are more sophisticated, they expect more. But I don't think it's impossible. I think if you had Christian's level of obsession and were willing to commit 30 years of your life to it, you could do it. The key would be finding a niche that isn't already saturated. For Christian, it was ultra-high-performance road cars. That niche still existed in 1994. There was room for a new player. Today, I don't know what the equivalent niche would be. Maybe electric hypercars, although Rimac is already occupying that space pretty effectively. Maybe something around autonomous vehicles or flying cars or some other emerging technology. The point is, you'd need to find something where the incumbents aren't already dominant and where your unique perspective and skills give you an advantage. But the broader principle that you can build a highly successful business by staying small and focused on excellence, that's absolutely still valid. Whether it's cars or software or consulting or anything else, there's always room for someone who's willing to be the absolute best at a specific thing and charge accordingly. Alright, so let me bring this back to the core story. Christian von Koenigsegg, 22 years old, sleeping on a factory floor trying to build supercars with no experience and no money. 30 years later, he's built one of the most respected hypercar companies in the world. Cars that sell for millions of dollars. Technology that's licensed to other manufacturers. World records across multiple performance metrics. And a company that's profitable and growing while staying true to its original vision. The strategy was simple but incredibly difficult to execute. Build very few cars, make each one a masterpiece, obsess over every detail, innovate constantly, stay small and focused, never compromise on quality, charge prices that reflect the value, and play the long game. And the result? A company that's worth over $1 billion, that employs 500 people, that builds maybe 30 to 40 cars per year, and that has a multi-year waiting list of customers willing to pay millions of dollars to own one. When I think about what makes this story remarkable, it's not just the cars themselves, although they are engineering marvels. It's the fact that Christian made it work against all odds. No experience, no connections, no funding, in a country not known for car manufacturing, competing against companies with 100-year legacies and unlimited budgets. He survived the early years when he had no money. He survived the financial crisis. He survived regulatory challenges and supplier issues and technical setbacks. And he did it all while maintaining complete control of the company, never selling out, never compromising the vision. That's the real achievement. Not just building fast cars, but building a sustainable business around building fast cars. Doing it in a way that's profitable, that's scalable to a certain point, that can survive economic downturns and market changes and all the other challenges that kill most companies. And I think the secret, if there is one, is that Christian was never trying to build a business first and foremost. He was trying to solve engineering problems. He was trying to build the best cars possible. The business success was a consequence of solving those problems better than anyone else. This is a pattern you see over and over with great founder-led companies. The founders who are successful long-term aren't the ones optimizing for business metrics. They're the ones obsessed with the product, with the craft, with the work itself. Jeff Bezos was obsessed with customer experience, not with hitting quarterly revenue targets. Steve Jobs was obsessed with design and user experience, not with market share. Christian von Koenigsegg is obsessed with engineering performance, not with selling more cars. When you optimize for the right things, the business metrics take care of themselves. When you optimize for the business metrics directly, you often end up sacrificing the things that made you special in the first place. Now look, I'm not going to pretend Christian hasn't made mistakes along the way. There have definitely been missteps. Some of the early cars had reliability issues. There have been delivery delays on various models. The company has probably left money on the table by not scaling more. From a pure financial optimization standpoint, he probably could have sold the company years ago for hundreds of millions and walked away. But I don't think Christian sees any of that as mistakes, because the goal was never to maximize financial return or to build the biggest company. The goal was to build the best cars, and by that metric, he succeeded beyond what anyone thought possible. And honestly, I find that inspiring. In a world where everyone is optimizing for growth and scale and exit multiples, here's someone who's been doing the same thing for 30 years, doing it at a small scale, doing it exceptionally well, and building something that will outlast him. When Christian eventually does step back, whenever that is, there will be a few hundred Koenigseggs in the world, each one a piece of automotive history, each one representing thousands of hours of engineering and craftsmanship, each one a testament to what's possible when you commit completely to a vision and refuse to compromise. That's the legacy, not the money, not the company valuation, not the records, the cars themselves. Physical manifestations of one person's obsessive pursuit of perfection. And I think that's beautiful in a way. In an increasingly digital world where so much of what we build is intangible, ephemeral, here's someone building physical objects that will exist for decades, maybe centuries. Objects that represent the pinnacle of human engineering and craftsmanship. So that's the story of how a 5-year-old kid watching an animated film in 1973 became the founder of one of the world's most exclusive hypercar companies. How a 22-year-old with no experience and no money built a billion-dollar business by sleeping on a factory floor and obsessing over details that nobody else cared about. How a soft-spoken Swedish engineer out-engineered Ferrari and Lamborghini and became a legend in the automotive world. It's a story about obsession, about patience, about staying true to a vision even when everyone says it's impossible. About understanding that being the best is more valuable than being the biggest. About building something that matters rather than something that just makes money. And honestly, I think we need more stories like this. More founders who are willing to stay small and focused. More companies that optimize for excellence rather than scale. More people who are willing to commit decades to mastering their craft rather than looking for quick exits. Because that's how you build things that last. That's how you create real value, not just financial value, but cultural value, artistic value, engineering value. That's how you make an impact that outlives you. Christian von Koenigsegg is 51 years old. He's been doing this for 30 years, and I'm willing to bet he'll be doing it for at least 30 more, because this isn't work for him. It's his life's purpose. It's what he was meant to do. And sometimes that's all it takes. Find the thing you were meant to do, commit to it completely, never compromise, and see where it takes you. So that's the deep dive on Christian von Koenigsegg and how he built one of the most insane hypercar companies on Earth from literally nothing. From sleeping on a factory floor to building cars that sell for $3 million. From zero experience to setting world records. From everyone saying it's impossible to proving them all wrong. Look, I probably got some technical details wrong here. I'm not an automotive engineer. I'm just someone who's obsessed with understanding how these companies were actually built. But the core story is solid. The pattern is clear. Obsession plus patience plus excellence equals something extraordinary. If you want more stories like this, if you want to understand how the world's most successful companies were actually built, not the sanitized PR version, but the real messy, complicated truth, hit that subscribe button. I release new episodes every single day, deep dives into founders and companies that changed the world. I'm Alex Morgan. Thanks for listening to Behind the Billion.